I visited East Germany for the first time in 1959. It was very gray, crumbling. The only color you saw was communist red, and nothing was spontaneous. Everything was controlled. People had to go join a parade. There was no joy. It was like something you had to do. The little joy happened after that, and the good thing was that a day like this, there was ample supply of beer and schnapps, and you could really go out and have some fun. The country was really bleeding to death, so it was a big, not only a body drain, but it was also a brain drain. So they secretly decided to build a wall which would be tightly controlled and nobody would be able to cross anymore. So that happened in 1961. 2 years after that, a magazine which I worked with asked me to go to West Berlin and look at the effects the wall had on the children who had grown up in the shadow of the wall. And to my surprise, I found out that children were totally relaxed about this incredible, horrible edifice. I was also able to look through the barbed wire with my long lens, and I saw an East German army soldier, actually, with his rifle, and he was there with his little boy. There was a railway station, which was later dubbed the Palace of Tears. And what had happened is that the government in East Germany allowed people over 65 to travel and see their relatives in the West, because they felt if these people cross over and they stay in the West, we don't miss them. And I think the reunion of these two, obviously brothers who look so much alike and are dressed very much alike, was a very moving moment. They simply wanted to touch each other and then see each other. And they probably had lived only a few kilometers away from each other in the two parts of Berlin, but never really had a chance to talk. My wife happened to be a reporter at Stern, and she was asked by the editor, would you like to cross over and live in East Germany, in East Berlin, and be our correspondent? Compared to the rundown, ruined buildings which were all over old East Berlin, this was heaven, because you had a real apartment with 2 or 3 rooms. You had a bathroom with water coming out of the wall, and you had a toilet. We took it for a fact that our apartment was bugged, maybe even our car was bugged. We had come there armed with lots of addresses and telephone numbers. We even had some relatives in East Germany. And then we called them up and said, surprise, surprise, we're living in East Berlin, and why don't you come by and let's have coffee, or can we meet and go to a restaurant and talk a little bit? And there was zero enthusiasm on the other side of the line. The reason was that any East German who had some kind of an important job was not supposed to have what they were calling West contact. So they were closely watched by the state police, and any West contact would be noted and frowned upon. Education played a big role, of course, because the rulers knew that they had to bring up a new generation of firm believers in socialism. They knew, because they listened very intensely, secretly, to what everybody did. They knew that the older people in the country were in the majority not enthused about what had happened. And this was one moment where I understood, the word Untertan, the underling, a person who is obedient to his masters, to his state. And they were really bringing up a new generation of Untertanen. This officially was a farmers' and workers' state, a proletarian state, they called themselves. But people actually, they had this yearning to become bourgeois, much different than from West Germany, where at the time we had hippies, we had people who had long hair and were smoking pot. We had the simple wish, which we found very normal, to do an interview with a typical steel worker or an industry worker. And very prominently, when we got there, the table was set. They had an incredible amount of very greasy cake. They had a bottle of schnapps there, so it looked very splendorous. The conversation was a little bit subdued, because not in the picture, but to the left of me, there was another gentleman sitting. He had a black leather coat on, and I don't have to explain to you that he was from the Ministry of Security, and he was listening in and taking notes of everything these people said. In addition to your minimal requirements, you had to go out and hunt for things. And one of the things that were especially scarce was fruit, and especially exotic fruits like oranges or bananas. And everybody walking around in East Germany had a little bag, and they called it the perhaps bag. So perhaps you will find something. Perhaps you will run into an orange. Perhaps you will see a banana or a chocolate. This country was run by very limited minds, but very shrewd minds. And it was kind of hard to understand that these very mediocre-looking people were ruling the country with an iron fist. Very dangerous people indeed. The wall had come down in 1989 after people simply decided that they couldn't stand it anymore. Unfortunately, as a photographer, I missed this point. I was on assignment, but I got there later in 1990, and the wall was still standing, and I got this picture of a young boy, and suddenly everything I knew so well and understood so well was topsy-turvy. Everything had changed. And it was a joyous moment, but it was also clear it would be a difficult time for both Germanys to adapt to this radically changed scenario. One thing that happened immediately is that capitalism came into East Germany. They poured in because they sensed they could make a killing. And I caught this moment where this lady was looking to that purple cow, which is actually an advertisement for a chocolate. And she was totally baffled. She couldn't make any sense of it. Suddenly she was surrounded by goods which were just within her reach. The only problem is she had to pay money, and this was the big thing. How did you get Westmarks? On October 3rd in 1990, finally the two Germanys were officially reunited into one Germany. Unification was and is never easy. And many Western people treated the eastern half of the population with disrespect. But they had lost the ground under their feet. Everything they knew was suddenly not existing anymore, and they had to reorient themselves. Some did it very easily, and some had lots of troubles and still have troubles today. I don't think we should miss Lenin and Stalin and Ulbricht and Honecker a lot, but they represent at least a try of what mankind could do, but they failed bitterly, of course, and brutally. In some aspects it was a dream which was shattered, and many people believed in socialism for a while, and so many were disappointed.